Spider-Man.
Stop. We are going live. Thank you for joining us. And congratulations, you have discovered another meta egg where we talk about the craziest and most meta aspects of film. Wait, we have a reverberation here and we need to turn it off. Boom, it is gone. Poof, just like that. All of your problems go away. So back to what we were talking about. Today, we are joined by our friend and the creator of Saturday Morning Vision Quest, Mr. Frank Zero. How you doing, Frank? How's it going?
Hello, I'm doing well, sir. How are you doing?
So good, so good. I like this
great.
because we've basically made a tradition where every day is Saturday.
Yes.
Even Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day. But
turn any
you know,
day
I've been
into a
thinking,
Saturday.
is it appropriate to say Happy Memorial Day?
Yeah, I think
look,
so. Is somebody gonna be offended about
Memorial Day is like you're
memorializing?
supposed to be. How about somber? Somber Memorial Day is more appropriate, right? What is
Sure,
it?
sure. It's yeah, I guess that's supposed to be the mood, you know. But would the troops want us being somber, or would the
Happy?
troops want us just doing a remember and thank you and
Well, regardless, happy Memorial Day, Frank.
happy
Thanks for.
Memorial Day, everybody.
You want to tell everybody what we're doing today? Do you
Yes, sir.
do you feel
I
confident enough to handle that one?
I think I can get that one. So we're venturing further into the Spider-Verse, looking at some very bizarre episodes, and now we're laying out for you today a lot of the episodes that either directly reference NASA or the whole plot is obviously about a space shuttle or a satellite or something like this, which comes up a freakish amount of times, just before you even get to the late 80s or 90s, just with the early Spider-Man show, the earlier Spider-Woman show, and then as we get to the first Spider-Man in the 90s, and then Spider-Man Unlimited, which came out shortly after that. Will, is there any plot points I'm forgetting you'd like to add there?
No, I mean, you came to me with this as a bigger project. There's a whole like
Right. So we want
you
to do we
you've
want to do
discovered
all of
so much involving NASA that it's a thing that you've kind of become a little obsessed with, I guess is safe to say.
Well, I mean, it's I'm obsessed with the faked alien invasion episodes. I'm obsessed with the alien mind control or the human on human mind control. And
Right.
so as I started to pick these things apart, I wasn't looking for NASA. I was looking for interesting, deep conspiracies, and I found some just looking at NASA stuff. So then it started to blend together, like the one Spider-Woman episode we're going to look at today. But we have a lot more. We're going to be moving into a space where we're just talking about these shows in space, these shows dealing with aliens in space or aliens in general, and other themes that you guys have been familiar with. Like we've recently been doing the reptilians and still have more material to show you there. But today we just wanted to, because it's so bizarre, take a stop and look at all the NASA stuff. And some of the NASA stuff blends
NASA
over
stuff,
into black
particularly
magic.
with Spider-Man. We zeroed in and
Yeah.
we focused in on Spider-Man because
Yeah.
I
So
mean
we have more just
it is
NASA
weird.
stuff without Spider-Man, but we decided to continue with Spider-Man as a theme. But NASA had their own cartoon. There was a appearance on Johnny Quest. There's a lot of themes that went into other shows, but just for the sake of today's show, we were just focusing in on the weird NASA bit, and that includes in the '80s Spider-Man show NASA coming up some 4 times, and 2 of those are within 3 episodes of each other. In other words, there's a NASA episode, a random episode, then another NASA episode, and NASA is in the description of both episodes, the official description of both episodes. And like I said, there's another 2 that are obviously using NASA. You see it on the side of a helicopter, and another one's just about a space shuttle. But we don't have many other places that there's control rooms full of nerds and space shuttles launching. The mind usually goes to NASA.
Right. I mean, that right there, this is what we're talking about, what you were talking about visually, so everybody can see it, is like the 1981 Spider-Man, which was not the first. I guess let's go back real quick. This is Spider-Man in television, We have the Spidey Super Stories. It was 1974 and 77, and this was live action. It looks like, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I'm
then
familiar with that
the
series.
Amazing Spider-Man 1977, which was also live action.
Okay,
Of course, people who are
that's
not
the near
familiar, the
comedy.
Spider-Man story. I mean, Spider-Man's basically like a biochemist. He's super smart, even in high school. So he's involved with things like, say, Oscorp or something. I mean, he's on a school trip to radioactive spiders when he's bitten. Like he's always a kid who is what's the word? Precocious enough to be involved with like some big corporate, like whatever, like here's the thing though. Stark Industries and Oscorps and things of these nature don't exist, right?
What do you
So
mean?
when you have to deal with things of going into outer space, you're going to have to be dealing with NASA
Yeah,
by
yeah.
default. Even if
But
you're,
Oscorp and all those, they're just defense contractors. Stark Industries,
right.
they're defense contractors. So they're not non-existent in our world.
Well, sure, but
Space
they're not like
related,
household names.
aerospace, we only recently had other aerospace companies other than NASA. We had Lockheed and everything working on aerospace, but we did not have Skunk Works. We did not have the public did not think of multiple places from which shuttles could be launched other than NASA. So surely for the run of these shows, we're only thinking of NASA as the space related agency. I think that's
Are
what
you
you're saying.
are you familiar at all with the 1978 Japanese like TV show for Spider-Man?
Yes, it's less comedic than the shows we were making, the live action
Hmm.
Spidey shows we made in the US, and it's more daring, it's more interesting visually. It's
It
very
has. Doesn't he walk
strange.
around in like a tech though? Doesn't he have like a robot
Yeah,
sidekick?
there's
Maybe a
lots of
partner,
running around and fighting on the streets and running up the side of buildings as I
like
remember
Power
it, and
Rangers.
lots of bizarre shots from tall buildings and yeah, very Power Rangers-esque actually.
Okay, then we have Spider-Man 67, but here specifically is Spider-Man 81, which we're talking about, which is the animated. I guess this would be the first. This would be the first Spider-Man centric animated TV show, 1981. Or
Unless they
animated.
had the Jack Kirby version of that, Jack Kirby and Spidey don't cross that much, but there was cartoons of Thor, the Avengers, Iron Man, Captain America, and I would assume there was a version for Spidey. But you're right, this is the first,
Spidey centric, like the first
regular episode,
project.
consistent episodic Spider-Man series for sure.
Okay, and so the point of showing you this is the amount of times that even in these short descriptions that are available on Disney Plus, where you can see all of these episodes, and we encourage you to do so, you can clearly see NASA. By episode 5, the Sandman is coming, and all of the vehicles will say NASA. And
And
it
then
gets to the point that
go
it
to
creates sort of a little curiosity. Here, another one. NASA sends a rocket into space built by Dr. Doom, unaware of his plans.
and then the one right under it,
Right.
23.
The Vulture kidnapped scientists to gain control of a NASA space probe. So we mentioned before how like in G.I. Joe, how like every time they have to answer to somebody, it's to the United Nations and not necessarily the American government.
Yeah.
I mean, or do you think that this is just coming off of like the fact that space was a big deal?
Well, Doctor Doom has to deal with the UN when he uses all the satellites
Right.
to turn the volcanoes on. He doesn't deal with any world government. He clones himself to deal with all that. He deals with the UN directly. Like many villains in the Men in Black cartoon, the aliens fake an alien invasion in the UN building. In GI Joe, they go directly to the UN, or Cobra goes to the UN to take over the world or whatever. All these cartoons have that consistency, but then if you look individually, GI Joe is talking about a cashless America in the future, and they're all giving weird clues to some sort of plot, if you will.
Okay, so then this kind of leads us to our first little episode that we're going to break down, but it's not really Spider-Man. It's like Spider-Man adjacent, I guess you could call it.
I mean,
I
it's
mean,
the same universe, you know.
Spider-Woman. And
A
this
great
was,
show. It's a great
you're going to have to give
psychedelic.
me some notes on this one because I can't remember exactly. Oh, this is 1978. Is that what you said?
Yes. So this one's very psychedelic. Spider-Woman, for some reason, is the first character to have just a very heady kind of the psychedelic is the only word I can use because it's the use of psychology and surrealism and all these other things to have this very bizarre experience that is at that time even maybe unique to comic book stories. And at least let's see, two,
Yeah, I
four.
noticed like
There's
there's a,
six different Alien episodes. There's a NASA episode. There's two NASA episodes, and there's six different Alien episodes. And this is just the first season of a show in the 70s. So the 70s, of course, is a heady time for all this kind of original ancient aliens, psychedelic kind of ideas going on. But the show is still too bizarre. I highly recommend it. Comic fans will be a little let down that they don't see many comic adjacent character cameos or plot lines, but this is setting the stage, I think, for something like Spidey and his Amazing Friends, which would come maybe a full decade, if not a little less later, where it's Spider-Man, Iceman, and Firestar. So, Realm of Darkness is episode 2 of Spider-Woman, the only season that's available. And this gets into Dormammu and black magic, as we can see here clearly. I'll shut up for a second so you can just take that in, take the visuals in. It gets a little extreme. And
you
so
heard it correct.
this is going to combine what looks like satanic ritual abuse or the worship of a dark god, certainly is factually going on here, and NASA, oddly enough, and the
Right.
black magic mind control hypnosis kind of game that's going to be played on the NASA staff once they enter that facility. So you can already see where the word psychedelic may actually ring true very early into witnessing the series.
The talking head of Baphomet. That's what so many we have. Cyanide pilled. Cyanide pilled joins the chat, folks.
Yes. He
Talking
may
head of
be
Baphomet.
he may be
Dormammu as
making a
Baphomet.
reference to the kind of thing in Invisibles where you have a severed head, or particularly the severed head of John the Baptist, which is one of these things in sacred unknown ancient Freemasonry where you'd have a talking head that would kind of do the Enochian for you, that would kind of speak languages from other beings in other dimensions or some intelligence
Oh, I know what you're
was
talking about.
earthly for a while. Yeah, I can't think of the correct
I think I
name
know what
at
they're
the moment.
called. Here, let me check real quick.
Sure, man.
It's okay. Is that what you're talking about? All right, hold on a second here. Let me move us back over to this. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, because they have a John the Baptist is the example in the Invisibles, but supposedly this was a real thing that
Oh,
like an
this is a
occult
comic book
tool.
line in the Invisibles. Yeah, because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
makes sense. This happens a lot. This is what the wait the Knights Templar, but it goes all the way
Exactly.
back to Orpheus, right? Like the idea that there's technology and prophecy in the head. So after the head is cut off, the head will continue to talk and tell you what to do, right?
Yeah, and it can be used kind of like a scry mirror or other sort of complicated occult tools for breaching into the other side or communicating something from the other side. But at the same time, I think you're right in the sense that a person who had the head removed, their intelligence and wisdom will kind of stay, and you can use some basic mechanical process to awaken them during ritual and let them. Uh, I guess just share some knowledge from their lifetime experience or from the other
Right.
side,
It's
perhaps.
just the
That's
Wizard
the
of
part I
Oz,
didn't have
though, right?
clarified.
Like the
What's
Wizard
that,
in
buddy?
fiction, a great example would be like the Wizard of Oz, right? But I
Sure.
guess, okay, talk a little bit about, like, I know because in 2008, I was way into looking at like NASA patches and
Yeah.
how the NASA patches could be construed as like, um, I don't know,
Evil.
devil worshiping or Freemasonic ritual
Yeah.
symbolism or,
So in the main NASA patch that everyone's rather familiar with, you have this random snake's tongue weaving its way into the word
oh, great.
NASA from outside the image. The word NASA in Hebrew translates to deceiver, and in Gematria it translates to 666. Uh, when you take the idea that they are deceivers, you can take that to mean everything from covering up a flat Earth all the way to the way that the footage from the moon landing and the ISS is all so questionable and so laughable at times that we're actually dealing with people who obscure our entire universe and reality. So when you look really into the Siebert guy, Bart Siebert made those films about did we ever go to the moon? And he got his lights punched out by half the men who claimed to have gone to the moon, being obnoxious and trying to gain this information, forced them to swear on the Bible that they went. You look at the first footage from when we came back from the moon, and these men are destitute. They are not excited that they just did the first thing for humanity ever. They are not psyched to talk to the public or to share with anyone what they experience. They say inconsistent things about seeing stars and not seeing stars, and then modify that over the years for some reason as they became older men. But that first conference where they came back from the moon, they are destitute. And you can look at that by itself. You can look at movies that have. There's a movie coming out about faking the moon landing and the whole.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Tatum and Johansson, I think. Here, let me
yes,
see if I can
yes,
find it.
y-
Go ahead.
you're correct. Yeah, yeah, and that's one coming out. But they had the what was it? The O.J. Simpson movie, Project Saturn, something like this, where they basically faked a mission to Mars, but it was really a parable about how you would fake the moon landing. And it shows them bringing all the men. They're trained, they're ready to go to the moon, they're scientists, they're as smart as you think they are, they're the right men for the job. But they wind up going into a side room instead of in the shuttle, and in the side room a bunch of government employees explain that they know exactly where their daughters are at school right now. They know exactly where their wives are at grocery. They could eliminate everyone in their family unless right now they sign this thing that says for the rest of your life you absolutely went to the moon. And so they in the same moment are trying to emotionally grasp with, wait, we're not about to get on a shuttle and literally go to the moon, and also, oh, now we have to lie to the American public for the rest of our lives on some Department of Defense national security nonsense, and we were not kind of told about this. And O.J. Simpson is one of those astronauts. But there's been lots of examples the public can kind of use, like Bart Siebert's films and many documentaries around it. I don't ask anyone to, when trying to go through this stuff, stop at why is the flag waving or not waving in the moon's non-atmosphere? Are there or aren't there stars visible from the whatever? Is this in a sound stage or is it not? Is the ISS actually in a island off the side of Canada, where they have a whole NASA project set up. You can see from Google Earth and whatever. I ask you not to stop at these individual things, but to take a cumulative review and really look into it. Oh, I also ask you not to put flat Earth in the same set of questions. But look at that information for yourself, dig deep for maybe a day or two, and look at a lot of it, and just see how you feel about the whole thing. You can start with the breakdown of the word NASA, but you could not stop at any goofy conspiracy point and instead review a lot of data just by yourself with your own thoughts and see what you think about that. I'm sorry, Will. I was just
No,
answering.
you were doing fine. You were doing fine. I encourage everybody to look and stuff, but not get nutty. That's all I would like to say. We want to
Yeah,
keep the channel up and running.
there's never a reason to get extreme. Oh, you're telling that to me. Yeah, I was
Oh
just
no,
about to
no, you're
say.
doing good. You're doing good. You're doing good. Like I appreciate it.
No problem, man.
Let's see. I don't know, man. That's like all some good points right there, and it kind of goes nicely with everything that you're seeing, like in the series itself. I
And
did
if I can
want to
make
talk
another point
about
real quick, buddy, I was just going to say that if you see a lot of stuff in fiction and you see it done over and over and over in fiction, like the
it
fake
could just
alien
be what
invasion or the
works, though.
implanting of human beings or the World Trade Center doing some weird stuff in the 80s
Right.
or 90s, I never would never suggest taking that and trying to explain it to 100 other people that there's this
Right.
commercial that shows the few, but instead take more and more information. And if fiction won't stop repeating the same messages about
Right.
something
Sure.
specific,
Even if
look
you
into
want
the
to
real
write
version of it.
fiction yourself, I mean, if you would like to write version, it's good to just study
Sure.
what how things influence each other, because I think in the end of this, we might get to a point where we can kind of see why Spider-Man and NASA have to do with each other.
Sure.
Um, I mean, but but still, it's bizarre. Something either intentional or unintentional created this. I mean, it's almost like it's almost like you look at Spider-Man as some sort of like mythological creature like Hercules, and over a timeline long enough, the story of Hercules changes. And so there's like different cycles, and then one cycle influences another. And what starts off as just like corporate people trying to play off of what's popular with the current generation of kids, it like catches on and carries off decade after decade, because it's like becomes like a story plot, just like Uncle
Yeah.
Ben story plot of,
That's why
of
I like to
Spider-Man.
interview.
So our
That's why I like to
shuttle
interview the
launches.
guys who made these stories. I'm sorry, Will, were you done there?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, the idea is that you want to interview the people who are making the modern mythology and see, A, how conscious are they of mythology in the first place? B, how much did they really think about or pour their own influence into things, and how much was just kind of trying to get to, by the end of the week, you have to have this episode written, and they're just going to throw in whatever they can. And then C, were they consciously repeating themes from show to show that happen to be about conspiracies and the technocracy and possible strange events? Or are they not conscious of this and offended by this and think I'm insulting their artistic whatever by bringing such up? And the kind of consensus I came to after interviewing a lot of these writers and some of the artists or whatever is that it's 50%. You don't realize the guy drawing the Men in Black cartoon is working at a Lockheed facility, a top secret military facility that he needs specific clearance just to go draw Men in Black that week. And the other 50%, somebody was into Jack Kirby and they were into Ray Bradbury and they took all these kind of Gene Roddenberry and they took this influence and this kind of storytelling, which is based off mythology we're all familiar with, and they just moved it into another for a new generation and told the story what they thought was appropriate to tell, the messages of a new generation or whatever, something like that. So I actually found that 50% it's that creepy and it is conspiracy, and 50%, there's just guys out there who like comics and they have for years, and then they wrote some cartoons and, whatever.
Right. They just, I mean, that happened a lot in like the 90s. They just basically revisited certain beats, like say with in particular X-Men, right? So in
Yeah.
X-Men in the 90s, some of the best-selling comics are just basically re-emergence of storylines that had happened 20 years before in the 70s.
Well, there
And
was
so
that. Then there was in the 90s, you had a writer would often go X-Men, My Little Pony, Johnny Quest, uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, and then it was up to like 50% of those guys went on to 10 more examples we would know right off the bat, like My Little Pony or X-Men. And the other 10 of those guys stopped right there. But when I found the guys who were overlapping and bringing a literal story, all like a completely composed, encased story from My Little Pony to Ninja Turtles, and then over to Cops, the cartoon, the COPS Cops show from the 80s.
right,
Once I saw that
cartoon.
kind of thing, I really wanted to ask them, why are you repeating this kind of theme or message in three different shows? or those were some of the most compelling where I never got to interview the person, but I saw like 22 cases of them habitually bringing NASA from show to show to show, and then mind control from show to show to show, and then some ancient talisman that some weird freak kid that lives on the outskirts of town brought to the heroes in Turtles, and then in Ghostbusters, and then in, and it just got kind of bizarre. If you're a writer, you would think you want to, maybe not come up with something new every punch you throw, but at least embark on a new kind of story or a new, why would you just bring and it's not really the thing that's being passed down from Greek mythology. It's like the thing that they kind of randomly created on their own, and then it had something to do with modern conspiracies and modern takes on, mind control or aliens or something.
Again, like spiders, though, like we had mentioned before the show, like spiders hitch rides. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because spiders have
totally.
that sticky nature to them. So
Yeah, they throw out a web that can catch the thing.
Right. They throw the web and catch a thing.
I mean,
still,
like
it gets
midair,
weird.
They can hold on to a web.
It almost feels like they have to. Like, okay, here, I got this. This right here. I'm gonna make my screen big real quick and then undo it for a second. Here, let's see. Boom. We get boom.
Yes. I own that. I didn't realize it.
Let's see. I'm not sure what the date on it. It's got to be probably in the
90s,
late 90s,
early
2000s.
Mid 90s.
1995. You're right. So this is past most of what we've seen on as far as like the cartoons, because basically we get 94 and 99 are pretty much the end of the cartoons, except for the new wave of cartoons. So 95 is pretty. Or I thought this would be later. This is kind of cool here now.
No,
because
that's when they released a few novels. They released 2 X-Men novels, one by Claremont, one Wolverine and Sabretooth novel, the one you're holding, and I think another Spidey novel. And I can't remember the rest of the series, but they suddenly decided to do a bunch of big novels like that.
This is Spider-Man: The Lizard Sanction by Diane Duane. Is that right? Is that how I say that?
And basically, I'm not familiar with it.
I mean, it has to do with the lizard again, but it also has to do with villain or Venom. I think Venom is after the lizard here to kill him, because I think the lizard has killed somebody. And then there's this whole like philosophical debate on if Doc Connors is held responsible for the death of someone when he's not a conscious human being. But will this one comic book struck? Will this be comic right struck? No, actually, it hasn't been. Is it? I'm keeping an eye on it. We have, just so everyone knows, if you've not been a part of Meta Egg before, they're designed not to get comic book struck. It takes a lot of time to make it to where the computers don't even notice what we're doing. And that's not to, that's just like sort of trying to make a haiku. We're not trying to really get around comic book or screw over anybody with copyright. We're not trying to be pirates, although we are. We're just basically trying to show the visuals of what we're talking about.
Well, we're definitely not
in the understanding. Like,
we're definitely not trying to get away with showing long segments of the show in secret. We simply are talking about this stuff, and it's much more interesting for you guys if you can see the footage than hearing two nerds reference a cartoon.
Right. But it also helps because you can sit there and say that, there's like 20 episodes of Spider-Man with NASA. But it really helps if you see it.
It does. It does. We could just sound crazy,
All right, so Lizard Sanction. This is page 280, and it says Spidey thought he knew. If I was going to blow up the space shuttle, he thought, his first twisting with disgust at the thought as he jumped and ran and jumped again. I wouldn't bother with the space shuttle itself. I'd go straight for the main fuel tank. It would have been full of LOX and liquid hydrogen for a couple of hours, and he suspected that was why the attack had been timed for now. Someone knew the timetable by which the shuttle was fueled and prepped for launch, and why wouldn't they? It was pretty much public knowledge and had even been included in the press package. And that's what ends up being the main place of catharsis in the novel, or at least this novel that came out in 95, again with the space shuttle being the main focus.
Yeah.
Now the
And then
one we're looking at, do you know which one we're looking at now?
Yeah, it's the one with Iceman's sister still, right?
Right. So this is
Yeah, yeah.
Super Friends, right? Or Amazing Friends. Spider-Man and
His Amazing Friends. Yeah. Which they've made a new show of, which makes it ultra confusing. With like
Now the
baby
cool thing
Spider-Man.
about this one is it all has to do with mutants. I think that the main storyline is that they're using some sort of enhancement ray with bright flashing lights to brainwash his sister, or at least Iceman's sister, seen right there. And there's a rogue agent from S.H.I.E.L.D. who is trying to take over a satellite.
Yeah, so they were putting something on the satellite that would make her powers like endless and invincible, and to stretch all the way over the Earth or whatever. And then this one guy in S.H.I.E.L.D. hijacked it. He is a real S.H.I.E.L.D. agent in the funny books. And so then on the way to trying to get her power enhanced or whatever, she doesn't realize she's brainwashed, and Iceman's trying to kick her out of it. Meanwhile, trying to stop this satellite terror, which is like Doctor Doom's satellite terror in Countdown to Doom, the episode
which is
21.
the 1981 series with the word NASA in the description.
Right.
They all show like launches. There's a bunch of launches and like the segment breaking of the, like in all of these, all of the episodes that you sent me that we kind of reviewed. If it doesn't say NASA, it definitely has like a NASA style either rocket separation or shuttle launch.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there. There's like in further episodes we may mention, or we may not, but there's a Johnny Quest episode where there's just somebody taking over a shuttle launch. There's Invasion America, a Steven Spielberg series about like abduction and contactees and all this other. It's very like Steven Spielberg animated X-Files kind of attempt, and they show a NASA shuttle that didn't come out till like 8 years after. So we may continue this at some point, as we also continue the reptilians and the alien mind control themes and stuff like that.
All right. Oh, geez, I hope we haven't been struck for copyright. Okay. Let's see here. I have to start this one over again. Or let's see. Are we doing all right with this? The weird thing about the Super Friends also with the Iceman's sister is that the way that this show was set up is they had Spider-Man interacting with mutants. Like it's almost like a pre-X-Men from the 90s show, because it wasn't just Spidey centric. It was Spidey's relationship to Firestar, I think is her name.
Yeah, Firestar and Iceman.
And they have like a Three's Company, like 70s pad. Everybody's wearing turtlenecks and in conversation pits.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of humor to it, and all of it wasn't put there on purpose, but they eventually weave their way into X-Men, because I think there's an X-Men episode in this series, but then Spider-Man meets X-Men officially for a whole 2 episodes in the 90s series. So it almost is a preemptive like
but again, we reiterate that this is the final episode, is the launch, that there's really not very much NASA going on in the series till the very end. But it is kind of, it's ahead of its time, I feel like, because people shouldn't have known so much about the X-Men as they do later on, and just the whole idea with mutants. And what did you think about X-Men 97? I mean, there's kind of like a resurgent, and everybody's getting really excited about Deadpool and and Wolverine and like the coming of mutants to the live screen? I mean, where's your head at with that?
I
Are
mean,
you
the
interested? Or are you just numb to it?
X-Men 97 is excellent. There are so many ways it could have went wrong, and so many ways that they could have changed it from the show I watched as a kid, and have since watched a few times otherwise. There's the only thing that's missing in X-Men 97 is that the X-Men show from the 90s proper had this kind of synth-based soundtrack around all emotional and memory-based occurrences. In other words, whenever somebody was like thinking of the past or had like a tragic or a depressing moment, the music would change so dramatically in such a weird, like I said, synth-based way that it kind of made you slide into the mood with what you were watching. And it's something that a lot of shows try to do, and some can to some extent, but was so perfect in the 90s show. It's just something I wish any other show would try, if not another X-Men. But as far as using other characters, the plot points, the look of the characters, using computers to do the art, but not annoying the shit out of out of me, really, but anyone who liked that hand animation kind of based way of storytelling. Now people use computers to the extent where something just obviously looks like the product of a computer, and that also annoys me greatly. So the show has done something really interesting where it looks like hand animation, but then when there's just too much going on or whatever, they'll use computers to like change the way lights look or change the way lasers are firing or whatever kind of thing. But that show is great. Everything else Marvel has been putting out has been a disappointment, or if not disappointing and tragic,
Wow.
just so boring that's something I can't really mess with. I tried to watch the Echo show. I thought that was cool if you're making a show about like uh female ninja, but Echo wasn't that to at all. She was never anything like that. But she was a Native American who inspired Wolverine to try a vision quest as a way to healing part of his rascally shadow. And when David Mack took that on and sort of started using Echo in that context, it was a beautiful, beautiful painted experience of wonderful work. But then I don't know what these shows are trying to do. Like I've tried to watch, I think all of them, barring some of the new ones like She-Hulk or whatever, a character I really like regularly. But the shows are, like you said, sort of TV and not comic book storytelling. So there's nothing appealing for me. And the movies have become. I didn't really agree with the Thanos, just that the whole way that story went and the way it still exists, like even the costume design to deal with Thanos and how some people are still wearing those costumes, and that whole thing just got very formulaic and boring to me. And I don't know. As much as I like to stand up for Marvel stuff, I've found myself in the past couple of years like really growing distant from the a lot of the film projects. I watch every preview, like I'm really excited, like oh, Craven the Hunter movie. Maybe that'll be really cool. Maybe Morbius will be cool. It's stop, just stop what you're doing, and make comic book movies and cool cartoons, or don't. Don't meet us halfway with we think this will sell big in China and Walmart, so we're going to use these character licenses. And no, you can't have them in the X-Men cartoon that surpasses and has evolved past all of this giant corporate media because we own those two guys, and you have to tell X-Men stories without those two guys. What are you doing? But Wolverine and Deadpool's always been something that I thought was great and I've been excited about and translated to the screen very, very faithfully, almost as faithfully as like The Crow or something. So I really
Oh,
like everything that's going on there. I like how they get into the Weapon X projects, and I had no problem, or I enjoyed the Logan movie, and I've been enjoying every incarnation of Wolverine. I like that in the comic books we're now seeing that Wolverine's Weapon X technology was actually back engineered from the Predator's helmet and the Predator's technology, and these stories are kind of fusing. I like these ideas, though I'm not responsible for and haven't read into what's happening in the rest of Marvel, so I don't want to speak on that.
I mean, it makes sense, but I don't know how I feel about that. I
Just
didn't.
watch the way, look at the way they did it in the comics, and because I like read that
I
as
mean,
a
it makes
headline, it was
sense.
like,
I
what
kind of
kind of
am not.
insane shit? But once I saw the visual of how they fit everything together from the days of Dr. Cornelius and Dr. X and the original Weapon X kind of MK Ultra thing going on, all the way to I forgot where I was in the stride of that because I started seeing the
Yeah,
Spider-Man
because even if you
Unlimited
put
footage.
in like the Weapon X hat, the Weapon X hat resembles like the
That boy
Predator's
said
mask.
hat. Yeah, the helmet or the thing around his head, which probably shouldn't be called a hat, but it's very funny. Uh, it's very,
Putting
very
kind of
funny.
in like a Barry Windsor Smith kind of way. It's like a hat.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yes.
but I mean,
Uh,
it's like a Devo hat, you know, like
yes, it is
Wolverine's
like a
got.
Devo hat
It's
for sure.
Wolverine's energy dome.
Yeah, yeah. Until you figure it out that it's Predator's helmet
Yeah, but
from all the
it
movies you've been watching.
visually, like you said, visually it makes sense.
It
Visually it
does.
works, but it
And the way
pisses
they
me
did it in
off.
the
It's like,
comic, the way they did it in the comic, I mean, it's like a 5 or 6, maybe more part series called Wolverine Predator. And I mean, it's built around this whole context where they wind up fighting a couple times in history, like once like before history, once like the beginning of history, and then again in like the 80s or 70s in Laos or something. I forgot exactly where. But it's always Sabretooth, Maverick, Silver Fox, and Wolvie in a team hunting Predator because they just heard people were being killed in strange ways and they sent the Black Ops team, the Weapon X team,
right.
the initial
It
one.
it's funny because I'm a big fan of like Tom Clancy's like Ghost Recon, and
Sure.
that's actually like in there. That's like one of the you're basically doing, because the Predator movie takes place in like Bolivia, where there's like a Ghost Recon team going down there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what you're basically playing in that Ghost Recon game. I think it's called Wastelands. And then during it, you can go into a village that's very similar, and you have to like, you're the special Black Ops team that's having to track down the Predator. But I don't know. It's just, I mean, it
No,
makes sense. Like I said, it kind of gets me a little excited. I kind of like the idea, but when you first hear the idea, it sounds stupid.
like one of the big changes in one of the places I found a lot of origin story with Weapon X, like as a program, as a Black Ops team, that was very interesting was another crossover out of Marvel. So when you have the creator of G.I. Joe writing Wildstorm's Death Blow crossed over with a Team X or the Weapon X assassination team. That's a graphic novel. And that is another weird turn in Wolverine's universe that explains a lot of interesting stuff from a very interesting perspective. So you have two Black Op teams being written together by the guy who created G.I. Joe. It's very, the guy who created Snake Eyes. It's very cool.
I see the word Valis behind your head.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but I just did a Valis episode where I was telling people who are into this sort of thing are inspired by Philip K. Dick, and this is all your artwork. How cool is that?
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, all right, cool.
Or that's just
Awesome.
the
All
one
right.
behind my head. There's a few. But yeah, Valis
Oh, you
comes up
got
and you're
comic, or you got cartoons going on in the back. That's dope.
yes. We were watching Spider-Mans and I got stuck watching Punisher Spider-Mans to get amped for the show. I don't need energy drinks. I watch Punisher episodes of Spider-Man.
All right, I'm going to push you back to Spider-Man and get us back on topic. I know that we took a side note to the mutants because of Super Friends, but we kind of did that intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're going back to Spider-Man Unlimited, which I
You
think
got a
has
shuttle launch right here.
94, 99, something like that was the date.
99, buddy.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
Batman Beyond was at the same time and looks exactly the same and has a lot of the same plot points. And of course, that's a Marvel DC problem, but it doesn't seem to be for these two cartoons.
So, I mean, he basically has the same costume as the 2099 Spider-Man, but this isn't 2099 Spider-Man, is it?
No, it's not, but you're correct. The 2099 Spider-Man, even some of the concepts from that I think are in here, but that's not the plot exactly that we're dealing with. So we had a shuttle launch, we got a Stargate going on.
Which takes them on to the other side. It's the Ray Bradburyan idea that there's I think they even call it Counter Earth.
It is Counter Earth. That's what it's referred to in the books and here in the comic. I mean, in the show. Come on, man.
Come on, man. Pull
I
up,
said
dude.
comic. Like, come on, bro.
But I don't know. I think that that's interesting. We get to the point where the whole series of Spider-Man begins with shuttle launch.
Yeah.
And all of the rewrites and everything come down to them trying to like pull away from the comic book, and this whole idea where we can go to a whole nother planet and just start over and make it more space age and update by 1999. Like that was like,
Yeah.
you have Batman Beyond, you have Spider-Man 2099, you have Punisher 2099 by Romito Jr. and stuff, and like all
Yeah.
of this,
Warren
like
Ellis.
yeah, with like all of these ideas that of kind of having derivatives into the future with modern, or like more more like cyberpunk technology, I guess you should say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're identical because they talk about issues of today, and they both came out in like 99 or whatever it was, and they both have episodes about like virtual reality gone wrong. They both have episodes about AI gone wrong. They both have episodes about mind controlling people with technology. There's just a lot, and they both have like, I don't know, just a similar thing with the vehicles and the gadgets. Their costumes are very similar. You'll notice in Batman Beyond, everything's red and black, and Spider-Man Unlimited, as far as logo wise, everything's very red and black, like the Wolf Pack. And I don't know. There's the sinks with Spider-Man have traditionally broken down into way too many World Trade Centers, way too much NASA, and then his headgear, the whole look of Spider-Man, particularly in the black costume, starts to look like the gray alien, but like the gray alien and his technological disease that he gave
Eyes
man
use.
in fact and in life. In this fiction, we have the gray alien as a suit or a disease that can overcome Spider-Man. He looks very much like a gray, but the connections with the gray get weirder and stranger once you factor in all the alien episodes and things like that, and Spider-Man going to space and having this relationship with NASA, of course. Um, the idea of the black
Consistent
suit
relationship with NASA.
that
Consistent.
yeah, consistent relationship with NASA. The idea of the black suit that comes over him and kind of consumes him was first used by artist Todd McFarlane when he started to really get somewhere when he worked at Marvel. But the first thing he did when he left Marvel after this, exactly, the Secret Wars, the first thing he did after this was start his own company with a flagship character who is possessed by a black suit which fits skin tight to his body and is given to him by demons and everything. It's not an alien virus. But that really put Todd McFarlane on the map. And then you had the most popular look for Spider-Man ever, this black suit. And then Spawn comes out. He looks exactly like Spidey in the black suit, but he has a matching red cape. And he has this whole deal with the devil and the different kings of hell and everything like that. But
Yeah,
a
interesting.
lot of people get confused between gray aliens and demons. They have entire books written about how the grays are actually just biblical demons. And I don't tend to fully fit in this camp. I think a lot of different things are going on with
Well,
alien
okay.
interactions. But
So I think that what you're saying, I kind of want to give a little bit of backup to, because I know that there's been certain like religious scholars who say that symbolically the eyes of Spider-Man are related to like the goddess Kali, and also the gray eyes, the almond-shaped eyes that were so popular at the end of the 80s and the 90s. They
yeah,
say it's kind of like a symbol for like higher intelligence or a higher perspective or
yeah.
whatever. Like, so it's not just like
Well, the gray
wild
aliens
speculation.
they have more evolved brains than we do, but they're less evolved because they gave up on mating and physical activity they became so obsessed and reliant on technology. So the parable here is we want the big brains, but we don't want the useless, mutilated physical forms. So we're not going to bury ourselves under Mars and just have giant computers and an underground civilization that would turn us to that in mere decades. But we instead want to have the continuation of the use of our physical form and the chakras and the kundalini energy and all that stuff sort of align for this new psychic star child kind of type of human being.
Oh, so you're saying that this is all like subconscious program for us to become like star children? I mean, it's there. The symbolism is like in Arthur C. Clarke's like childhood end, and all of that kind of lead to that idea that science that there's some sort of pop culture is some sort of like evolutionary process for us to even prepare for space travel or something like
Well,
that.
you get into like Lloyd Pye and the whole idea of the elongated skull in ancient cultures and how predominant it was across the world. And was this not people trying to form their own brains, their own skulls, like the pharaohs or the ancient aliens or whatever who came down and gave them agriculture and, politics and sociology and farming and architecture and the worship of themselves, these gods who came down from above. And then you have generations of kings and pharaohs trying to meld their heads together, like the elongated skull ones. Now, if that's related to like the Star Child skull, or the gray aliens' actual skulls, and us evolving into a spacefaring race with our complete anatomy being used as our psycho-spiritual anatomy, the chakras, kundalini, the third eye, all these things functioning well, going into space, being allowed into a spacefaring civilization for the first time by other spacefaring civilizations who thought we were just going to nuke them if we got spaceships and were able to just move out into other planets. So we needed to get past that level of violence, but the continuation of worship of technology sees us on that path, a path very different from psycho-spiritual evolution. So, like the Greys, we're becoming so dependent on technology, we're going to let it do everything for us. And we're going to become obsessed with this lifestyle as opposed to one where we maximize the use of our bodies, minds, and souls.
Yeah, I've heard this comparison before, like having to do with like the Planet of the Apes analysis, and how in the 1950s shows like in the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, it's always portrayed as like there's some evolution between like apes, then humans, then grays. And that's
Yeah.
not like, or the elongated skulls that were very popular in the 50s when portraying aliens, like in Star Trek,
Yeah.
um, the very first pilot episode, of course. And then
Yeah.
uh, in Outer Limits, and I think there's also a Twilight Zone. Like all three of them have that kind of where apes, those elongated schools, and humans are all like portrayed as some evolutionary like process.
Yeah, well, all three, the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits, in the first 10 episodes, have so many examples of meeting transdimensional or outer space entities that one gets the impression that there's actually many types of beings trying to contact or that have contacted Earth. If you're looking at it in the way where you're looking at real UFO cases, real abduction and experiencers and contactees, and how many you can round up that are just seeing the grays, and how many see humanoid or blonde beings, and how many see reptilians and mantis beings and whatever, and you're looking at all of those stats. Uh, One has to think there's a few different programs going on. Some of them involve our government and a sort of consensus understanding among secret groups as to what's happening and an agreement with the aliens, and some of them tend to be utterly random, as if random creatures from random dimensions could just open a door somewhere in a forest and run for 20 minutes through one of our national parks and open another door and be back in their world or whatever. Uh, but we have so many cases of UFOs and alien contact without the abduction, just the contact part with sort of random beings that don't fit any kind of skull humanoid. What we think of as the ancient large and skull beings, were also about as tall as us, if not some 10 to 12 feet tall. And then when we're dealing with the Greys, we know that there are tall Greys, but we still have that same distinct head shape. The tall Greys are obviously much more evolved than the shorter, diminutive Greys. They would have been the product of absolute nuclear fallout and then just living underground. Whereas perhaps the taller ones were still going to other planets, were still experiencing things and needed their physical bodies, or saw that the worship of technology leads to the atrophying of the physical body and knew to keep that up, to keep their the triad of the body, soul, mind thing present, that they can't just replace half of that with technology and expect progress on a psycho-spiritual or a physiological or an anatomical level for that matter.
Well, do you think that that's where we're going to go for the next show, I guess, like towards aliens, or what do you want to do? What do you want to hit? Which
Let's do
episode are
that.
you going to send to me now?
How about we go definitely aliens, but let's let the audience in the next hour pick if there's overwhelming feedback that they want reptilians or they just would like us to continue towards aliens and alien mind control and things like that. And if there's an overwhelming reptilian thing, why not, crank out a part 3 or 4 or whatever. And if they just rather some other alien stuff in our usual pace, we will provide just as entertaining stuff about that, because I basically don't want to annoy people with the reptilian thing. But if there's more people out there that
Well, there's a
just want
lot
to
of
hear
it.
that,
Like within the
so
last couple of the week that you've been sending me the stuff about NASA, we've also been like passing back these 1 or 2 episodes about reptiles taking over, specifically with like the lizard and whatnot.
yeah,
And I mean, it's almost an obvious trope. So I I don't know, man. I think I like the idea about aliens and mind control, to be honest with you, because we had a
okay,
lot of that in this. Like there's
sure. We
if we
almost
go
got that
back,
a few times.
let's see here. If we go back to Spider-Man 81, there's this episode, The Pied Piper of New York Town,
Yeah,
where there's and something's going on where there's a hypnotizing of individuals, and the catalyst is basically a whole shuttle launch again.
right.
I mean, we got to reiterate too. We're talking about how many different episodes in the 81? There's like 5. There's episode 5. There's episode 7.
There's 4, but
There's
it's 4 NASA direct.
4 direct NASA.
Yeah,
Then in Spider Woman, there's
2.
4 or
Ed,
5.
there's 2, I think. Because
No,
the rest of
there's
that,
2 in Unlimited, basically. But in Spider Woman,
yeah,
there's the Shuttle of Disaster
yeah,
right
and then there's
here.
Realms of Darkness, and then
And
there's
then,
alien black holes, time travel, alien invasion, alien mind control, another alien mind control, and pyramids of terror, which is very
oh
important.
yeah. And then also all of the Star Wars reference, because there's Darth Vader,
Right.
there's Wookiees, there's one that goes into a live action, like it twists over in this like Cool World or Roger Rabbit type style.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also, it's a very,
Unexplainable stuff, man.
again, with the psychedelic nature of the show, with the the Spidey from the 90s, we actually can dig up more Dormammu because he comes in for 3 other episodes if anybody just loves the satanic look of Dormammu's set. But
We'll have to do a
that'll be in a
satanic
while.
episode because I want to
Sure.
involve with the Star Trek, the episode the Star Trek uses satanic magic and stuff too. It was real popular in the 70s because we were coming out of this like uh the comic code saying you couldn't talk about witchcraft and
Right.
death or anything like that in comics anymore. And then everybody dropped that, and you have people like Ghost Rider and all of
Right.
that lore that came through the 70s. And then in
Doctor
the
Strange.
80s, you have the Satanic Panic. It's
Right.
funny.
Yeah, yeah. But just to note, the Star Trek crew does not commit an act of Satanism. They, in fact, use normal Western esoteric tradition magic to fight a character called the demon guy. Who's the demon guy? Help me out here. The demon guy that they fight in Star Trek. who has the whole Salem witch. Beelzebub? No, it's
Oh,
another one.
Baphomet.
Uh,
It's not that.
okay, well, anyway,
No.
it's a king of hell, if we can accept that. And there's a Lucifer
They're all
character
the
who's
same.
supposed to be a good character. He's supposed to be a good guy that's teaching Spock, who's already kind of like alien, I don't know, druid looking or something, how to use the power of the pentagram in order to move physical space and time, objects in physical space and time. So he then teaches this to Kirk, who has the fight with the demon I can't think of the name of. And
Well, I mean, it's not like a reoccurring theme. So the demon, let's see, the demon in Star Trek. Let's
for
see.
Star Trek animated probably would. The demon is the Lucifer is named Lucius.
Oh yeah, it's even called Demon World. Is that right? Mm,
I don't think that's. Oh, Magic's a
the eighth,
Megastu. There we
it's
go.
the Magics of Megastu. Is the
Megastu.
8th episode of the first season of the American animated science fiction television series Star Trek: The Animated Series. It was 1973. That is so early of
So
a
this
show.
is the series that had David Wise. David Wise wrote for this series when he was 13. The episode about Kublai Khan and them rebuilding the pyramids and how the gods were angry because they never finished their project. And that whole thing was written by a 13-year-old David Wise, who would then grow up and write the False Flag Alien Invasion season of Ninja Turtles.
Like the whole season.
Yeah, but he also wrote Defenders of the Earth, very similar episodes between that and other series he wrote for, like I was explaining. Okay, please, Asmodeus. He fights Asmodeus. Why
Oh,
would that take that long? It's because I don't keep demons on a tab, but I should know things like that. I should know things like that for real. Moving on.
okay. I think in my conclusion, I think most of but outside of the 1981, we have the 1973 and 1975 portrayal of J. Jonah Jameson's son. And
Look
I
at that.
think that might be, I think this is my idea, is they use that as a vehicle for Venom from there on out. And so it almost became a trope for Spider-Man to be involved with shuttles because the only explanation for Venom outside of the Secret Wars, which they couldn't go into an animated series and say why he had the black costume. They just used meteorites or, I mean, because the J. Jonah Jameson's son is even in the movie for like the third Spider-Man that involves Venom as Mary Jane Watson's
But
like
wait. If they say that the Venom virus, like it did in the Spider-Man series in the 90s, was identical to the movie Species. They go to the moon, the little virus wiggles its way onto the shuttle, and then as they come back to Earth, it wiggles its way into somebody's ear, and you have Venom, or you have Species.
it's
Um,
him. It's him. It's J. Jonah Jameson's son is the first person in the 94 Spider-Man series. It comes down and it attaches itself to J. Jonah Jameson's son.
so
J.
then
Jonah
why?
Jameson's son has a huge history. He's Man Wolf. He goes to like a different galaxy and becomes worshipped as a god called Star God. And
What
then I
in
guess
the?
in like 2000s or something like that, 2005, he becomes Colonel Jupiter when they make him like an exoskeleton, like super soldier suit. But he's
Okay.
also like
And now he's the
She-Hulk.
Guardians of the Galaxy. But no, why
Right,
would
right.
after that after that whole thing with the Venom shuttle, why would it then be necessary in any train of thought to have some 30 more adventures with a shuttle without Venom?
It doesn't explain it doesn't explain it.
Over
I
four
mean, it
different
just doesn't
shows,
explain it. I mean, the
four
only
different
thing that
Spidey
I can
shows.
think of is there was a couple of different things that like converged in on it becoming a trope that Spider-Man goes with shuttle launch. And it would be interesting to see because like even in his when he enters the Avengers in the MCU, it's basically him and Stark hitching a ride on an alien spacecraft to go out into space. And that has nothing to do with all of the NASA like tropes that came before that. And yet it kind of gets thrown in there. Like
Yeah.
they make it a big deal. You've been to space, you know, and on in the Spider-Man third movie when it involved, you know, Tobey Maguire and Garfield with our Spider-Man that's current, and they're going through all of the different things they've experienced, and they're even talking about Venom. But you know, the MCU is the one that took him to space, and it's just weird, man. Like Spider-Man goes to space.
Right.
Spider-Man goes to space over and over, shuttle launch, rocket launches, satellites. It's it's over and over.
I'm eager to see when we go into these other series that I remember the shuttles. I'm eager to see if they have multiple episodes with shuttles. Like I thought Mighty Max had one. I know Johnny Quest has the Book of Rage, this fundamentalist crazy guy who's trying to get on the shuttle, stop the shuttle, or blow it up or something. And then I know Invasion America, the Spielberg alien show, has that shuttle that didn't come out until like 16 years after the episode was aired. But I'm just eager to see if the other series have multiple shuttle launches for just no reason again.
Okay, so let's see. Let's go through what we watched today. We watched Spider-Woman 1978, episode 2, entitled Realm of Darkness, I believe,
Yeah.
where a Baphomet head, as the chat room has called it, tries to take over a shuttle launch. Then we watched the final episode of Super Friends that involved the two mutants and Spidey hitching a ride up into space to stop a satellite that was going to create like an all-powerful mutant who is actually Iceman's retcon sister, because they give you the history of Iceman in the series and never mention his sister until this last episode. And then we watched Spider-Man Unlimited 1999 that had a very Kirby-esque inked look
And
to it.
if you guys, we'll cover it eventually. But if you guys are just bored and you happen to watch the second episode of Spider-Man Unlimited, they get into talk about the implanting a microchip inside everyone, and humans live at the bottom of society, and the animal human hybrids, the high evolutionary created, fill up the rest of society in this crazy counter Earth world that high evolutionary rules. And you'll just see a lot of technocratic principles that you hear about today and we fear today in the quickly coming advent of AI's consciousness, and they're all explored repeatedly back and forth between Batman Beyond and Spider-Man Unlimited.
For those in the chat room, thank you. I see people talking about Venom and rockets. Venom and rockets every time. It all alludes back to ISIS trying to kill Ra to get the ineffable name of God. So he's
Very
saying that
possible.
the rocket is a phallic symbol.
Okay, I see. ISIS created a poisonous snake in the shape of a dart or rocket to bite Ra.
Crazy.
Venom and rockets every time. It all alludes to the dough.
No.
Oh, shit. It went away, man. I was gonna read it. Venom and rockets every time. It all alludes back to ISIS trying to kill Ra to get the ineffable name of God. Very interesting, Mr. Cyanide pilled.
Mr. Cyanide pilled. Hey Frank, okay, look, okay, we can work out another one here in about a week or so. We're not
Yeah.
constricted by mornings. We're not constricted by Saturdays, because here at Meta Egg, every day is Saturday morning cartoons. Now, look, if you're not a member of Meta Egg, there is no members. There's no. All you have to do is subscribe, okay, and then hit that little bell, because we do live shows. I'm going to do larger formats that I helped, or I had AI help me make these scripts that I'm going to turn into bigger formed videos. Bigger form videos don't do very well, but they're probably the funnest to make. Then we have a bunch of shorts that you guys can check out that are on a range of like little movie Easter eggs. It's like a little Meta Egg in 1 minute. And now also I got to mention that our guest You can go read his blogs at just Google Saturday Morning Vision Quest. It all comes back from the name of his chapter and Sync Book 2, I believe. So
Yes, sir.
our friend has been published. And he is an individual who, is a plethora of information on things that most people don't know. That's why he's so important to us right here.
Yeah, and if you look
But
up Frank Zero, you can find my book about aliens and a book I did on parapolitics with Steven Snyder or Vicep. And you'll find the blog. And I've done, if you just look up Frank Zero on YouTube or Zero Night or Frank Zero the Farm, you'll find so many episodes where I was able to, of a podcast where I interviewed people, of interviews where people are interviewing me on their show, on Andreas Zertis's
right.
channel, etc. So thanks, you guys. Thanks for watching this one.
Andreas Zertis, I'll probably see if he'll allow me to come on Sync Tank. I've been, you and I both have been on Sync Tank a pretty good bit.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, I think that we'll do a show. I got David Plate ready, his album and movie synergies. We'll discuss those and why those are important and why we think those are cool. And plus, David Plate is as crazy as Frank Zero here. So
I'm a big fan, man. That's awesome.
all right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. And Frank, is there anything you want to leave us with?
No, sir.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Thank you. And check out some of our shows that we just recently did about Philip K. Dick.